Good morning, everyone. My name is Gabby Carrion, and on behalf of Caresoft Technology Corporation, I would like to welcome you all to our webinar featuring subject matter experts from Hitachi Vantara Federal. And with that, I will hand it over to Dr. P.
Thank you, Gabby. Welcome, everyone, to this session on eDiscovery Unraveled, Uncovering Process Realities and Technology Integration. Thank you for joining us this morning. And we'll just start off with introducing ourselves. I am Nayak, and I function as Chief Data Scientist with Hitachi Vantara Federal. I come with 20 years of federal government experience working in various different domains such as federal financial management, malware detection, waste management, records management. And that's where my tie to eDiscovery process started. Apart from network forensics and other various data-driven domains. I have a PhD in computational sciences and informatics, and I love and appreciate the art to the science, to this process of data science, which is often not as well understood and appreciated, that there is a certain art to this whole process of creating data-driven solutions, including e-discovery processes. My contact information is below, so please feel free to reach out to me, connect to me with me over LinkedIn. And with this, I will pass on to Jonathan Ferguson, my colleague, who will be joining us in this discussion and providing his insights on his data journey as well as his experiences with e-discovery processes and analytics. Jonathan?
Thank you, Dr. P. Hello, everyone. I'm Jonathan Ferguson. I'm the sales leader for our digital solutions portfolio. I've been in IT for roughly about 19 years. Prior to that, I was 5 years in the United States Air Force. And I've been here at Hitachi Vantara Federal for a little over 6 months now. So welcome, everybody. And if there are any newcomers out there, welcome, and look forward to a positive discussion this morning.
Thank you, Jonathan. Did you want to share some fun facts about yourself?
Interesting fact about myself, of course. I have an affinity for cycling, specifically pedaling in the woods and on a mountain somewhere. I love feeling the speed while traversing features like rock gardens, jumps, drops, and many more. I like challenges of climbing back to the top of the mountain, but also I don't mind riding a chairlift back to the summit. So that's a little bit about me.
Sure. That sounds a lot of fun, Jonathan. And to all our attendees, if you have something fun that you would like to share with all of us, please do. We look forward to hearing about it as well. So with this, let's get started on the e-discovery. Let's start with the agenda as to what we will be covering as part of the next hour or so, is that we will be defining what is e-discovery. And how it is connected to the Freedom of Information Act, or the acronym FOIA that most of us are more well acquainted with, particularly in the federal government analytics space, and how it is connected to overall analytics. So even if you are not doing e-discovery or FOIA, these are new terms for you. There is definitely a connection to the overall data analytics process, and we would like to make that connection for you, and how the processes and the infrastructure and the pipeline, etc., all that which is applicable to e-discovery FOIA, that is essentially also something that you can use as part of your analytics processes. So if you're interested in analytics, you are in the right forum. Let's not the term of e-discovery or FOIA dissuade you. So hang on tight, and please stay with us for this next hour. Connecting the analytics to multimodal analytics, and we'll define that term. Again, if that is a term which is not familiar to you, please hang tight. We will be defining it as part of this discussion, and covering a number of success stories as well as challenges in implementing an e-discovery and analytics process. We'll wrap up with questions and polls and next steps of this particular talk data to me session. Let's start off with an audience poll question at this point. You should see that on your screen. What does e-discovery mean to you? So this is where we are trying to get a barometer on what your current experience or your understanding. Take a guess. What do you think e-discovery means today or means to you? We would like to hear that, and Hopefully, we will help you get more clarity on what eDiscovery means or a eDiscovery driven analytics process means by the end of the session. So this question will come again later on in the session. I'm excited to see all the different responses coming in, and hopefully they become even more better and more well-defined by the end of the session.
Yeah.
All right.
It's interesting to hear how each framework applies to so many other use cases in the enterprise space.
Sure.
It'll be interesting to talk about that today.
Yeah. So we are seeing some responses come in with respect to eDiscovery. What does it mean to the audience? In terms of it means for them, a lot of the responses are in the space of saying that it is essentially analytics. We do see one audience member having raised their hand. Can you please write the question? Folks are answering in the Q&A section. So some of the responses we got from one of the users who, so the user is saying that one of the audience members is saying that they didn't see a poll. It should have popped up on your screen. So Kelly, can we pop up the question once more, if that's okay? So some of the responses which have come in so far is that it is essentially analytics, being able to work with different types of data to answer a specific question or an investigation. And one user has given a even more detailed answer in terms of it's preparing departing custodians for expected litigation or FOIA activity. And for active employees that are part of FOIA litigation, it's a do it now. That's a great summarization of what eDiscovery means. So we will, with this, we will move on with the discussion. So please keep the answers coming in the poll or in the Q&A window. We look forward to hearing them. And so let's get going with the topic, and thank you for everyone who's provided their input. So Jonathan, with respect to eDiscovery, how would you define eDiscovery?
Sure, thank you. eDiscovery, simply put, it's what the enterprise refers to the approach of encompassing various methods and technologies for electronic discovery in a single comprehensive strategy. eDiscovery, sometimes it's referred to as ESI, electronically stored information. eDiscovery is the process of identifying, collecting, and analyzing electronically stored information for legal, regulatory purposes, and as well as legal proceedings, investigations, or compliance audits. Multimodal eDiscovery takes into account the diverse sources of types of data that the organizations may need to manage during the eDiscovery process.
So I think one key distinction that we have when we talk about eDiscovery is that it is all the digital data which needs to be collected, analyzed, and processed and combined to aid an investigation process. Because investigations have always been around in terms of collecting material. And traditionally, in the past, it used to be paper-based. You're collecting hard, tangible evidence, whereas with the growing use of software systems and software-based documents being generated, that is Word documents, or be it spreadsheets, etc., emails, communications that are happening, all that is being tracked as digital evidence. And when that is involved, it brings in the concept of having to even deal with the different challenges that come in when you're working with digitally based data. In terms of in paper-based data, you can't change it, but then with digital data, there is the who created it, when was it created, who modified it. Those type of information are equally important. And of course, there's a challenge with that as well, because somebody could modify it. And as part of your investigation process, you don't want somebody invalidly or who should not be modifying it post and start of an investigation. Anything else that you would want to help clarify this term, eDiscovery?
Yeah, so protecting the original data formats of all the data, and providing the necessary retrieval and pertinent documents, empowering agencies to swiftly and accurately respond to those FOIA requests. eDiscovery covers a lot more across the data throughout your enterprise.
What are some of these data sources? What are the potential sources of these electronic data, apart from what I already mentioned in terms of documents and emails? What are the additional similar types of data that you have seen?
Yeah, so numerous sources out there in various formats, which you mentioned: emails, documents, databases, social media, instant messaging, audio and video files. Those are all that's a variety of sources that all pose a challenge when collecting data and then blending that data into a format that's able to be processed as well as analyzed and effectively.
And how can we ensure that all the relevant data sources are identified and included in the process? I particularly found it interesting that you mentioned social media, because there are so many social media platforms, for example, and not just restricted to social media, irrespective and with the other sources of data. How do you ensure that the right and relevant data sources are identified and are being included in the process?
Sure. So through eDiscovery tools, you can take advanced data processing capabilities and involve that within your data extraction, indexing, and application of machine learning and NLP, which is natural language processing techniques, to identify relevant information within those unstructured data sources.
Awesome. So you're essentially adding a lot of the automation to a largely manual process in the past.
That's
and
correct.
You are enabling the digitization of all these different evidence, which can come in varied formats from various platforms, applications, databases, and some of the data sources may be in the form of APIs. What is I guess that I kind of answered the question as to what is life without eDiscovery, without this automation, how much effort and time would go in terms of coming up with an evolved solution, which helps save time, helps make sure that you have all your resources and your data compiled and being done in a systematic manner.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a very complicated and resource-intensive process if you are doing it manually. We've learned that, and we hear that often from many of our prospective customer folks that we meet with on a weekly basis, that it is very taxing and intensive. It requires a lot of resources, manpower across the organization, as well as you risk time to value. So making decisions in an efficient manner for your organization or multiple organizations to make decisions based on quality insights.
Okay. The automation and making sure that you're using the right data for the right purpose and answering the question in an efficient manner. And that brings me to the to how you see the connection with respect to eDiscovery and the FOIA process and overall analytics. Let's start with what is the distinction between eDiscovery and the FOIA process?
Great question. So FOIA, if you're familiar with FOIA, so that's oftentimes the request of information. And then the eDiscovery process is the process of collecting, processing that information, doing quality checks, and making sure that information is what it's intended to be. Hasn't been manipulated, hasn't been changed. And then also provide all of that lineage and throughout that data process.
Sure. So would you say that in FOIA, there is a prescribed format which needs to be adhered to, and that is well defined, whereas eDiscovery is a more generic term?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Thank you. Appreciate that. Sure. No, that's a good connection.
Sure. And how would you tie that to analytics? Would you say analytics even is a broader term compared to over eDiscovery and FOIA? Because eDiscovery and FOIA have their prescribed output format, whereas in analytics, it's based on an use case or a user's specific data formatting, decision intelligence that they want to get at.
Right, right. Yeah, so analysis is a key component of this whole framework. However, without data quality, data extraction of the appropriate data that you're searching for, analysis could be certainly not what your anticipated outcome. So certainly has meaning that it certainly has an impact on that final outcome.
Sure, and that kind of leads to we often hear the term data and metadata. Can you talk a little bit about, let's define the term metadata. What exactly is metadata, and how do you collect data and metadata from various sources while preserving that metadata and chain of custody?
Sure. So during advanced processing of that data, you can include the data extraction index in an application to help manage each of those pipelines. It's essential to preserve potentially the relevant data to ensure its authenticity and integrity. And during that eDiscovery provides the mechanisms to collect, store, and protect that data in a legal defensible fashion. And I think that's the legal defensible fashion, or legal defensible is, I think, the key component to eDiscovery. Is that's the outcome that the anticipated outcome.
Sure. And how does metadata tie to unstructured data, and how does it enable us to make it better to make it more convenient and feasible to work including unstructured data in your analytics processes? Would you say that it adds a structure to the unstructured format and getting more tight handle on the volume that is often associated with unstructured data?
Yeah, so tagging the unstructured data, identifying what is unstructured data is super critical, right? And then managing that unstructured data in a format that makes sense and it can be analyzed for insights. Absolutely.
Yeah. And even not just the data itself, but even the analytics outcomes that can be useful further downstream, that can be the input for downstream analytics processes.
Absolutely.
And we should not lose any data and metadata that is being generated, retrieved, profiled from the raw data sources, because an insight can become data for something else downstream.
So absolutely.
Yeah. And this kind of defines the whole concept of being able to work across different types of data, structured, unstructured, and those different types of data define modalities, or what by modalities we mean different types of data analysis, which is combining various methods and various methods as well as various types of data such as this, like you're reading data from a database, which is termed as structured data. However, being able to include information such as files, emails, social media, these are all the data sources we have mentioned earlier on in this discussion, but they fall into the unstructured data space because they don't come in a typical row column format attributed to structured data. So being able to tap into all of that to generate and get well-formatted data, metadata, in order to get analytics and the knowledge representation, which again, as we were talking earlier on about that being enabling your downstream analytics processes, which are also a part of your eDiscovery process, where you are looking at these various sources of data, trying to get the information from it to help aid an investigation, answer specific questions, and aid your eDiscovery process.
So you mentioned you talked a little bit about the data collection and the various sources. They differ a little bit when it comes to the eDiscovery process, because you are collecting a lot of unstructured data. Those audio video files for investigations, for example, super critical and for analysis and processing that data for analysis and be able to make insights based on those attributes. So super critical, something that you have to keep in mind when you're building out a framework or starting your eDiscovery strategy, upgrading your eDiscovery strategy, and kind of eliminate and starting to reduce a lot of that manual processes that are taking place today. Super resource intensive, right? And we all know, we hear it every day, whether it's in the news or your employer, we're all doing more with less, and it becomes super challenging. So automating a lot of these processes will make your life much easier, but your organization's life and mission a lot easier as well.
Sure. And we have a question here asking, are people integrating FOIA operations with eDiscovery? And that answer is yes, because eDiscovery lets you get a grasp of all your various different types of data sources, irrespective of their modality and the analytics that you're doing with it. Whereas the only significant difference, as we earlier covered, as to how FOIA is different from eDiscovery is that FOIA has a prescribed format in which the data needs to be collected, tracked, and made sure that the data is not being modified once it has been included as part of an investigation. That veracity, that validation is being performed and retained. Integrity of the data is being retained. That's key. So that is the way eDiscovery enables FOIA operations. Is there anything else you would like to add to that perspective?
Yeah, I mean, FOIA, when you think of FOIA as the guidelines you've got to proceed by when extracting your data, processing your data, and analyzing your data. That data has to be data quality checks throughout those pipelines to make sure that you're in line with FOIA regulations.
We do see one of the audience member has a hand raised. Can you please post the question here so we can take care of it? So with this, I think it's time to move on to the next audience poll question. If you could use eDiscovery to investigate and uncover more about any historical figure or celebrity, who would it be and why? Well, that's a very interesting question. Jonathan, I look forward to hearing your answer on this. And any question is, feel free to provide any fun answers as well. We did mention historical figure and celebrity. Let's expand the question to say fictional character as well.
Sure, absolutely.
Why not, right?
It's 2023.
Again, as we said, any fun answer is okay. And these answers come in as anonymous, so don't worry. Feel free to get creative. Obviously, no offensive answers, which I'm sure all of us know that. But yeah, there's some really neat answers. Um, no, and I'm not surprised. One of the answers is about Tesla, Nicholas Tesla. Um, so Count Alfred Kospitsky. Okay, that's interesting. I will say that I'm not as familiar. I'll definitely be doing a lookup on this, as I'm sure a couple of other folks here, and maybe the Wikipedia entry for him will be like, what? Why is this article being referenced so much more? Okay, there's some background to it that the person who stated it is a researcher in the field of general semantics. That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing this answer, and definitely going to look it up. And yeah, please give posting your answers. Jonathan, I will turn it over to you. Who would you like to know more about?
I like the Tesla answer. I would love to know a lot more about Tesla and how they are being successful versus some of their close competitors, especially with the recent news releases related to how much some of their competitors are losing per unit when they make a sale. So that's something, certainly that piques my curiosity.
Sure. Any other historical figure or celebrity that you would like to know more about? And use eDiscovery process to investigate. All righty. I think I would like to know more about Walt Disney and how he came about all the entire Disney enterprise. We do know a lot about it already, but it's always piques my interest how he thought about it and the whole process around how that organization operates. And increasingly, they are a lot data driven in nature. So that particularly also piques my interest. And did he ever expect that when he started it, if he would be alive today, how surprised would he be like, yeah, I knew it. It was going to be data driven in nature and in the years to come. All right, please keep sharing your answers. And even if the poll is closed, you feel free to drop it in the Q&A window. Let's continue our discussion here. And so following on from multimodal analytics and an understanding of what is eDiscovery, FOIA, and analytics, that connection to overall analytics. So how can we validate that the data has been collected and processed correctly? You would be looking at, for example, you have collected all this data. How are you going to be, just to clarify the question, when you have collected the data for your for answering an investigation, and how do you make sure that that is the right data? And you're looking at, let's say you are investigating an individual, what are some of the challenges and how do you make sure that you are investigating the right individual or the right organization even at times? Because we have seen so many organizations also sharing common names today.
Right. So yeah, that a lot of these tools and this pipeline become really important when validating and doing the data quality checks. For example, and this is I think a typical use case when doing investigations, you want to make sure that you're investigating the correct person, right? And if your subject is named John Smith, you probably quickly realize that there's going to be a number of John Smiths out there during your discovery process. So you want to make sure, what's really important is you want to make sure that you're investigating the appropriate John Smith and not spending cycles on trying to locate and investigate the appropriate John Smith.
And that means that you will be looking at multiple data sources, doing that necessary validation, necessary connecting the dots. I know it's a cliche term,
right,
when we say connecting the dots or needle in the haystack, but that's typically what is happening when you are looking at these piles of data and filtering it to the right individuals, as you said. So how do you see the Pentaho data platform helping in that process?
Yeah, so through automation and orchestration, I think are the two key characteristics how Pentaho can assist or make sure that those processes are effective and can be leveraged throughout the advanced data processing. A lot of eDiscovery tools often include advanced data processing capabilities. This may involve data extraction, indexing, and application of AI and ML and NLP techniques to identify relevant information within those unstructured data sources.
So what I see there is a mentioning of a Pentaho data catalog over here. What specific purpose does that serve?
Cataloging your information provides a number of valued sources for through analysis. So I think one of the key things that catalog is going to provide is the necessary lineage, and then the ability to manage also that unstructured, semi-structured data formats that you have within your data pipelines.
Sure. And we spoke about the eDiscovery process where you are trying to filter your data to the right individual, right organization. Do you see the data catalog enabling that process?
Yes, absolutely. Catalog is super important into enabling the most accurate information as well as the information to be analyzed.
Sure. And then how easy is it to search? We are all very comfortable today using Google for the searching data out there. So similarly, among your data assets, having a similar interface, similar way, and the ease of and the convenience of searching those among your data assets, I'm guessing that's also an important tool or an important feature when you're using data catalog in the eDiscovery process.
Yeah. I mean, it's all super important. Even when it comes to eDiscovery, these tools are often robust in search and analytics capabilities. The capabilities help legal and compliance teams efficiently locate that relevant data, conduct the keyword searches, and apply filters, the necessary filters, to analyze for case assessments.
And it would also include the metadata, not just the data, but the metadata, which is a huge enabler in this search process.
Right.
Correct. And then that metadata in turn also enables domain-specific glossaries. So that way, depending on the domain in which your eDiscovery is happening, it is even more fine-tuned to, the search is fine-tuned to that specific domain and related domains.
Right. That's absolutely correct, Ashley.
So there was in the Pentaho Data Ops architecture, which we were covering earlier on 2 slides back, there was also one block which was talking about data integration and analytics. How much of a play do you or in need of these data integration and analytics capabilities when working in the eDiscovery space? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, integration starts your data journey within your enterprise. So having an effective data integration framework is essential. Not everybody does that. Not everybody's equal, I should say, in terms of what's out there in industry. There's great tools that are just for querying and collecting and querying information from databases. That's great, very effective. Those tools are, but when you include different data formats and the diverse sources, it becomes ever critical that you have the right framework, the right ingest capabilities to not only to collect that information, find those data sources, because finding and identifying those data sources is super critical, but then collecting that data so that data then can be blended and then processed for analysis. Great for any use case out there, but you have to make sure that framework matches what your desired outcomes are.
Sure. And would you like to talk a little bit about the open architecture, which is one of the key forte of Pentaho, and how that is further made robust by the low code, no code way of operations? So
Sure.
both the open architecture as well as the low code, no code. Can you talk a little bit about both these things?
Sure. So the open architecture is, I mean, that's a great thing when it's when you're building a framework, because not everybody's going to boil the ocean with the best of breed technology. We recognize that. We've been in this business for over 20 years, but we also know that that's very realistic once you go into an enterprise that's very complex, like a U.S. federal agency, and perhaps maybe working with multiple agencies for eDiscovery projects. The low code, no code certainly enables us to what do I want to say here?
Ease of working with the data for and upskilling and rescaling and not being as heavily technically intensive.
Right.
Yeah.
So it improves a lot of the processes that the technology is there for. But furthermore, it also brings and automates a lot of those processes within that whole environment.
Sure. So I think at this point, we are ready to talk about the success stories and challenges associated with eDiscovery process. But before we get on to that, let me quickly summarize what is the eDiscovery process. It primarily includes these tasks, that is identification of your data sources, preservation of the data, collecting the data and processing it so that you're filtering to the right data, you're answering the question in the most optimal manner, saving time and resources in the process, and enabling your review and analysis, and making sure, and if that process becomes repeatable in manner, that's the ultimate goal you want to have with your eDiscovery process, which something like a data platform such as Pentaho Data Ops platform enables. So let's talk about the success stories. Can you please highlight some of the success stories with eDiscovery and specifically these use cases which are being shown on the screen right now? And this is just a sprinkling of the use cases. So
yeah, sure. So anomaly detection, great use case for a lot of different needs and requirements for the U.S. government today, especially after you're thinking about us going through a 2, 3, 4-year pandemic. During that time there was an absorbent amount of fraud taking place across our U.S. federal agencies. So fraud intelligence, fraud detection, anomaly detection, great use case for eDiscovery. Document classification, another great use case. The documents come from all over and they're all in different formats, which make that a great use case for eDiscovery. And I feel like eDiscovery, at least my previous knowledge prior to my data journey, was all around legal and associated with legal. Image and video analytics, another example of multi-format data formats, that unstructured data that must be processed appropriately to be analyzed. Recommender systems can obviously is an opportunity for eDiscovery as well, because there's just a number of different data formats that are associated with those recommender systems. Lots of different applications for eDiscovery. Don't be afraid to take aspects of your eDiscovery framework and repurpose those aspects and those tooling for other needs across your agency.
There's a lot of automation which can be done, is essentially what I'm hearing from you. And a lot of these have traditionally been done as part of traditional paper-based investigation process. However, getting that much needed automation, much needed the enablement via machine learning techniques, which learn from the patterns of the process, enabling these in the past. And working with various types of data is essentially being enabled by a robust e-discovery process. Can you talk a little bit about the different natural language processing or text analytics processes, which have definitely gained prominence, and everybody is looking at all these automation with respect to how do you leverage text data in as part of your automation process, because e-discovery again, or the investigation process, looks at documents and textual content. So how do you see that happening, and any challenges you have noticed?
I'll be honest, my knowledge is a little limited in this, the natural NLP area. So I'm going to turn this question back to Dr. P. Dr. P, in your experience, your data journey is much lengthier and robust as than mine. What challenges have you seen within natural language processing, and how it's evolved over maybe the past year or two? Because I feel like technology is evolving rather quickly right now, and we see all of these things surfacing and impacting these data pipelines, these data management, and generative AI is another example. So natural language processing, how have you seen that evolve recently, as well as how is it impacting data needs?
Sure. Natural language processing as a field is not a new field. The convenience that we have today based on these GPT-based systems, the transformers, GPT-based systems, and the most popular today being the OpenAI ChatGPT, that has brought it into the popular fancy. However, there is a huge operational efficiency which GPT-like systems are bringing in, is that you are able to tap into all those documents that your organization has been creating and archiving over the years, over time. For example, we are looking at how do you automate responding to RFPs. Even agencies are looking at ways to look at the current repository of the RFP, RFQs, and helping them understand the gaps in those existing RFP, RFQs, and understand where are the gaps and where new RFQs need to be created. Apart from being able to automate that creation of that document which goes out as part of requesting some the industry and the federal contractors to respond. So not just creating the first version of the RFP, RFQ document to be sent out to the industry for response, but also to look at that repository and understand where the gaps are. That's from the federal government agency type operation. Whereas on the other side, on the federal contracting side, we have seen where folks are looking at their existing responses and being able to leverage and tap onto that and get that first version of the response in as little time as possible. That time has come down. That time has reduced, whereas earlier on, somebody had to manually go through, look at the different responses, do the mapping to the requirements. Even if it's not as convenient today as dropping in the RFQ and saying, hey, write me the response, I won't be surprised if that's something in the near future.
So natural language processing is very effective and very beneficial to U.S. federal contracting.
Yes, and enabling and increasing the usage of the data, which used to be largely keyword-driven searches, that making it into a more of a conversational style. But one key thing that always needs to be stressed when working with GPT-like system is it is limited to whatever it has been trained on. So there's always a need to vet and validate the response coming out from the GPT systems before it is confirmed as what you should be sending out as response to external entities.
Yeah. And I think this conversation is timely. And if there's anybody in the audience that has questions or part of a acquisition procurement division of a U.S. government agency, this is particular in your wheelhouse and something should be of interest to your organization. Absolutely. There's many organizations right now. I say many, there's probably all of them that are in the process of developing strategies to upgrade their current acquisition systems today. So they're much more effective. They're capable of making decisions much faster, making decisions to who the awardee is, and working through that process. And I think that process is super time consuming and labor intensive. And it's all manual for the most part today, other than doing keyword searches and so forth. That's yesterday. There's new tools out there that certainly can augment and help the contracting use cases, acquisition use cases to be much more effective and much more performant when it comes to making awards and so forth.
So if you have a corpus of documents, and by documents, we just don't mean like Word documents. It could be a document could refer to your emails, could refer to your spreadsheets, your Excel spreadsheets, your XML JSON based documents, your messages which are coming out, the various formatted messages which are sent for communication purposes. All those are defined as documents, and you will be able to use this much needed automation via machine learning and the natural language processing to tap into the information, the hidden insights, and the knowledge in that corpus of untapped documents to be used as part of your analytics process and enable your investigation and your analytics processes.
That's right.
Sure. Time for another audience poll. Let's get into it. And this is what we had mentioned earlier on, that this question will come back and it is time for it. So what does eDiscovery mean to you? And there is a poll question as well about did eDiscovery, okay, we are going back to the poll question about what does eDiscovery mean to you? Jonathan, while we are waiting for the answer, is there anything that you wanted to mention to our audience and you would like to take this opportunity to highlight that?
Yeah, so I mean, eDiscovery in general, really, we talked about a number of different use cases for eDiscovery, but not only where eDiscovery fits in. There's legal related to almost every activity that goes on within the government or an enterprise. So eDiscovery has those attributes, those similar characteristics that fit the same framework that you're using for other use cases: contested logistics, situational awareness, predictive analytics. There's a lot of stuff that's that has eDiscovery attributes. So use those attributes, include them into your framework, and it'll help your success story much greater than continuing the manual processes that perhaps your agency and your organization is utilizing today.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So many great tools out there. There really is.
Yeah. It's a matter of harnessing those tools to make your job easier, get a tap on the corpus of raw data which is out there and turning that into information and insights.
Right, right.
And then equally important to keep those findings and insights so that you're using it further down as data.
Absolutely. And making sure that data hasn't been changed.
Sure.
Manipulated.
So we are getting a lot more evolved answers now to this question as to what does eDiscovery mean to you. Let me share some of the responses. It is the process of collecting ESI to make valuable data insights. Process of collecting ESI to make valuable data insights and analytics. And I love this particular answer, which comes in saying that something very different than it did an hour ago. So mission accomplished, Jonathan. um, Jokes aside, that's a very another few responses are it is the electronic way of obtaining information such as documents, analytics, and more, electronic data and management, and providing defensible documents to legal or FOIA group. Absolutely, that's absolutely what it should be. It's about making sure the process of collecting data is right, as well as the validity and the legitimacy of the collected data is being maintained throughout the investigation process. And by investigation, it could be an eDiscovery, it could be a FOIA question you are responding, or it could be a analytics question that you're answering in terms of, it could be for your tactical, strategic, and your operational needs. Irrespective, when you're using data to help you get better at tapping into the patterns and trends in that data, or looking at the patterns and trends in the data for the much needed automation, you are using eDiscovery in that process. So with this, let's move on to the Q&A section. Please feel free to drop your questions. There is another audience poll, sorry, before we get to the Q&A, but yeah, please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A. We should have the next question. Does eDiscovery become more relatable to your use cases post this webinar?
That was fast.
Yes.
Yeah, there's so
Love
many
it.
shared attributes and for eDiscovery, multimodal eDiscovery, especially when you're, many agencies are now communicating and making decisions based on the same data, but it's a shared and collaborative decision making process then. Right?
Absolutely. Thank you. And yeah, we're glad to see that most 88% of the respondents are saying that this has become relatable to your use cases. But for the person who mentioned that it is not, we would love to hear more from you as well. In case you're working in a domain which is data-driven in nature and indeed you could not make that connection to eDiscovery, we'll be more than happy to talk to you, as well as the folks who said yes, and see how we can be a part of that eDiscovery data-driven journey and how we can enable you in that process. And hopefully Pentaho Data Ops platform can be that platform which enables you in that eDiscovery process, working with both structured and unstructured data with a open architecture and the low-code, no-code platform, which makes it extremely convenient for both technical and non-technical folks to be a part of that data pipeline journey. So with this, let's move on to the Q&A. Please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A button, which is there on the top of your screen. So one question, and I think I'll take that, Jonathan, is what challenges can be addressed on JSON deliverables? So with JSON data, it is often a challenge that the JSON format is there for a convenience, that your data is organized in a manner, but it is more for the automation processes. So Pentaho Data Ops platform makes it easy to process these JSON documents and extract the elements within that JSON document that are of most relevance for you as part of your analytics process. So doing that is straightforward. It's just a transformation stage, which you drag and drop and put it as part of your pipeline. You provide the JSON path and you're able to extract that specific element within your JSON data that you are most interested in. The nested JSON structure, that can be addressed as well. And it's not just JSON, even XML data can be processed as conveniently. You do not have to write lines and lines of Java code before you are able to look at the data element within that JSON structure. So It's a huge time saver when you're working in a platform such as Pentaho Data Ops, and you have JSON XML document, and there are existing stages which you can quickly tap into and use them to extract the elements from there.
Great question.
Great question, absolutely. So do you have a threshold? I'm going on to the next question. Do you have a threshold in data size, documents or GBs where gigabytes, where machine learning is viable? We are using 30,000 docs. There is no threshold in the data size as long as your system is appropriately configured so that it can actually read that size of the document. But we can definitely work on doing it in an optimal manner so that you are looking at these 30,000 documents, you're doing the necessary profiling, extracting the metadata, indexing that metadata, and using it as that metadata as part of your analytics process. So that is definitely viable. Once you have that metadata and any additional data that you want to include as part of your machine learning, that is doable in Pentaho Data Ops platform.
Absolutely.
Anything you would like to add to this, Jonathan? That feasibility of working with both structured, unstructured data. Any examples you want to share from that space?
Yeah, we run into a lot of we're in a lot of conversations today related to unstructured data and managing the unstructured data, making sense of that unstructured data. So super important, and that's probably something for the audience to think about of how what your current framework looks like. Where do you have gaps in that framework? Or maybe you're underperforming in data integration, and you're seeing you're not receiving the data quality that you're desiring, or just the inability to manage those unstructured data formats. Those are really great areas and great inflection points for Pentaho. Like we said, we are an open architecture, completely open. So you can plug and play where you have gaps, where you don't have gaps, or if you have other tools that you need to insert into this framework, such as additional security and so forth.
Yes, definitely that's an aspect we didn't discuss much about. Thanks for pointing it out, Jonathan. Right. From the security aspect, do you want to talk a little bit about the sensitive data and the security angle to that?
Yeah, so all robust systems out there all have some level, provide some level of data security and privacy. As it relates to Pentaho, data security and privacy is top of mind for us. We help organizations comply with data protection laws, regulations, and ensuring that sensitive data is handled securely for that eDiscovery process.
Sure. There's one last question before we move. What tools would be best for identifying the best matches between two sets of paragraphs? Now, that would be something which we can do within the Pentaho Data Ops platform, or we could tap into more evolved text analytics tools. But how Pentaho could help in there is it would streamline the operational aspect of it. We would tap into certain tools which are more efficient in doing it, and use them as part of the pipeline, make it easier to work across. Going back to the earlier question about working with 30,000 documents, that's definitely something we can work with, or even a larger number of documents. We can process terabytes of data, provided the system is configured with the right way. As you can imagine, with the right computing and the memory resources. Once you have that, we can enable these type of matching content across documents. We can have as part of our architecture about data deduplication, and which is a huge advantage. For example, this particular slide deck that you are seeing here, maybe tomorrow I'll create a copy of it for another presentation, and I won't have any changes for it. For example, using something like the Pentaho Data Ops platform architected with other tools, we would be able to take care of that deduplication so that I only have one copy of this system retained there. Or what you could do is also do tiered data storage, where data sources which are not being as actively used, they can be moved to a low cost infrastructure platform versus leaving it in your high cost, effectively high cost fast access platform, so that can be used for more time sensitive tasks, and when required you can pull the data from the low cost tier system.
That's super important today because a lot of these applications and use cases that we're talking about today are in the cloud, are in some flavor of the cloud, or multiple clouds, or at home and the cloud. So definitely critical when you think about egress, data egress.
Yes. So we have a follow-up to this particular question where they say that we generally have less than 200 in one list and as many as a few thousand in the second list. It is still possible to work across it. We'll just have to make sure that the solution is optimal in nature, it is performant, and it has the right configuration and resources available. And if required, that we need more evolved solutions which are specific to this type of text matching, we can include it as part of your data pipeline process and get that operational advantage and efficiency.
Some of the new comers out in the audience today, if you're not aware of Pentaho until today, that's great. Pentaho has been around for about 20 years today. Hitachi acquired it, I think a little over 8 years ago. But that said, when Pentaho was released, shortly after that, there was a market crash, right? And that market crash enabled Pentaho to be under the covers of most of the trading platforms around the globe. Believe it or not, it's still used under the covers of these trading platforms today, and not just public trading platforms, but also trading platforms managed by the SEC, or insurance programs managed by say DHS or some other agencies. We perform very well. We perform those billions and billions of documents or data sets that they're querying, analyzing, processing on a daily basis. So we scale really well, we scale out really well, we scale up really well. So challenges related to the size of your data sets, complexity of your data sets, we perform very well, and have a number of client references to showcase.
Thank you, Jonathan. That was a good note to end this discussion on. With this, let's quickly wrap up with our next steps and the action. So thank you for joining us in this session as part of our gratitude and thanking you for being a part of the session. 10 attendees will win a Talk Data to Me t-shirt. Drawing will take place from today's attendees, and winners will be notified via email within 24 hours. We will be collecting the winner's address and size to ship out the t-shirt soon. So watch out for that if you are the lucky winner or not. And as next steps, we would definitely encourage you to continue learning and do reach out to us to schedule a discussion, see a demo, because there's a lot more to the eDiscovery than what we have been able to cover in this 1 hour or lesser. We would definitely love to have a more deeper discussion around your use case and how we can enable that. eDiscovery, FOIA, analytics, working with structured, unstructured data, and that whole gamut of data-driven activities to enable your solution and make your automation more viable. Do attend a future Talk Data to Me webinar. Look out for announcements on that, and please provide us feedback on your topics of interest. These are the upcoming sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.